Stole my intro, but that's all right. So firstly, yeah, great that Seek was able to host this. Hopefully it's the beginning of a long tradition. And any feedback and social posts that help us sort of promote how great this event was will be very helpful. So a bit about me, James Corcoran. As Marcus mentioned, I'm the engineering lead for client platforms here at Seek. We are a little unique in that we manage both our Mac and Windows fleet in the same team. But one thing I will say is that it's actually resulting in a better experience for our end users because we're considering both platforms equally when we make our decisions. A little bit of a side there. But so today I'm going to be talking about using GitHub Workflows to automate our packaging requirements. Hands up if you have to do packaging. Yeah, thought so. And so what I'll be showing you is actually like a template repository or a repo whereby you can either take inspiration from that or you can use an install script to adopt this solution to manage a package. Now, over to you, computer. There we go, that was weird. So I did a dry run earlier this week with my team, as I'm sure any other presenters would do. And the feedback overwhelmingly was that the way I drive a computer made them car sick with a large amount of keyboard shortcuts. So I've pre-recorded my demos, sorry. So a little bit about client platforms and our history and approach. This is just going to set up our motivations for the solution I'll be showing you today, the solution that I'll be showing today. So I'm sure like everyone, we like to automate everything. We always lean towards proven solutions, vendor support or large community support. Because we do automate a lot of stuff, we need to make sure that we monitor and alert on it in case it's not working. Martin will be talking about that later on. And if we're going to put time and effort into something, we want it to be reusable. A bit about the history. I haven't been at Seek that long, but I'm sure like many organizations, we used to host our Jamf. We used to have a Mac Mini in a build room, running a bunch of services and all that. All of that stuff is a lot of work and it doesn't really have an outcome for our end users. So we've tried to move away from that and gone towards, you know, cloud automation, that kind of thing. Packaging is another one of those things. It's a lot of work, all back of house. It's obviously really important, but you know, the more you can automate it, the better it is. So what are we using now? So we've moved towards using things like Insallomator, which is great. Not perfect, but it's still very good. We're using built-in app updates where we can for patching. And then we've started our journey with Jamf app installers. So far, we're really pleased with the results. We're only using it for patching a couple of apps at this stage. But I've got a lot of trust in that solution long-term. And I think it will become our preferred solution where possible in the future. So all of this means we're not using AutoPKG. Who still uses AutoPKG? Yeah, a couple of hands. I reckon there would have been more a couple of years ago. But we're also an enterprise and we live in the real world. So we still have a number of packages we still need to update regularly and produce. 3 of which are critical. Can anyone guess what the category of those packages might be? Security vendors, which just can't seem to get deployment right. So we needed a manual packaging solution for those remaining packages. When we looked around at the tools that we had available, GitHub Workflows and or Actions, I kind of use those 2 names interchangeably, seemed to be the right tool to reach for. What did we want it to do? We wanted an end-to-end solution. We wanted to incorporate source control so that we can store our package files somewhere safe. And we wanted portability. We don't have that Mac Mini with all our assets on it anymore. We don't want to rely on my computer. I might be away sick, so it needs to be portable. And we needed easy adoption and reuse. In terms of the outcomes, pretty simple. Build, sign, notarize, release a package. So, welcome Mac Package Generator. Mac Packaging, I don't know, terrible at naming things, but I wanted a short GitHub URL. So what is it? As I said before, it's a template repository. It comes with a create package script, which is very inspired by the way you would install Brew. And it basically pulls a bunch of stuff into a repo to manage a single package, which then later automates the process of packaging through GitHub Actions, GitHub Workflows. So once you've used that create package script to create a repo for a package, this is basically where you land with the project structure. So you've got your .github and workflows folder where your workflow files are, which are just YAML. You don't need to edit them, which was an important part of building this solution. The package name itself is a monkey package root, so you get things like your payload, where your files you're delivering are going, a scripts folder for your pre and post install scripts, and then it takes all the complication of a package, pops it in that build info file, and yeah, nice and easy. But if you're keeping things in GitHub, you need to cater for things like ownership, permissions, and empty folders, which GitHub doesn't do in a way that would support creating a package. So we need this BOM file, which does that. Because we're regularly updating those packages, we need to make sure that BOM file is kept in sync. So the tool we reached for was something called a git hook, which is a pre-commit script that runs every time you run a commit on the repository, and that will rebuild the BOM file. In the helpers there are all the little scripts that I've created that make this possible. We're at a tech conference, so what tech's involved? We're using Bash. I'd love to be using ZSH. Maybe you guys can inform me later on, but I just can't find cool tools like shell check to work with ZSH. We're using the Git CLI a lot. Now, if you're not using Git regularly, it can seem a bit overwhelming. What I would say to you is if you can learn like the 5 or 6 key Git commands, you get like 90% of the value that Git provides. It's worthwhile putting the effort in. Xcode command line tools, that brings in things like Python, product build and package build, which is what Monkey Package is built on top of. And then obviously we're using GitHub Workflows and secrets. All right, my wife made me put this here because she's in marketing and she said this is too boring. All right, so I'm gonna do the demo in the reverse. I'm gonna show you the end result. So a fully set up repository that's managing a package, and then how easy it is for anyone in our team to then update that package source and produce a outcome ready to use in our fleet. So, gotta get the, yep, here we go, it's playing. So this is a repo, it's called Security Agent, shocking. And as you can see here, it's got a release with Security Agent 1.1, and there's a package I can download straight from GitHub. You'll see that was created by GitHub Actions. So, common workflow, Security Agent decides, hey, we need to release a new version. So we download the package source, and then anyone can just use the GUI of GitHub. They don't need to do any command line stuff or terminal or local computer stuff. And they can just simply remove the old package and replace the new one. So the key here is that I want to reiterate is that anyone who can edit this repo can do this. And they don't need to set up anything in particular on their computer. So I'm going to upload the new security agent. Probably should have fast forwarded this bit a little bit, but whatever. And then because it's a monkey package project, I'm going to edit that BOM file and I'm going to bump the version up to match the security vendor's version as well. Nice and easy, just committing straight to the main branch from the GitHub website. And at that point, I am all updated. So next, I'm going to head across to the actions. I'm going to trigger a workflow. So I'm just using the, you can see here, I'm going to build a signed package and publish a release. The workflow, you can just run it from the GitHub website as well. So I've sped this bit up a little bit. Those workflows, when they run, they'll be queued for a little bit. Once they start kicking off though, you can actually click on the job and you can see the workflow running itself. It's very verbose, which is really good when you're troubleshooting, but typically you don't need to read a lot of this stuff. Okay, awesome. So you'll see there's a create release button there, and that took 41 seconds, which is pretty quick. So if I go ahead and click on that create release step that ran there, there's a handy link to the actual release itself, and I've got a newly released security agent which is being built using GitHub Workflows, ready to download and put into my MDM. Of course, you get all the benefits of using Git, like a full release history and source code of each version. So that's where we can get to with this solution. And I think it's easier than running packages locally and manually on your device. So let's have a chat about some of the things that make up what I just showed you then. So a GitHub workflow file, I'm not going to make you read code, that's just there to fill white space. But basically it's a YAML file. All you need to do is define a name for your workflow, define triggers. So I'm doing everything on workflow dispatch, which means click the button in the GUI. But of course you can do automatic triggers as well. I'm defining a job, that's easy. The job is to build a package. And then I'm using a GitHub runner. So these are self-hosted runners hosted runners by GitHub, no configuration required, and you can specify a macOS one. And then after you've done that, you just define the steps of your workflow. The steps that I'm using here are pretty simple. So I'm checking out the repository, which means download the files to the runner. I'm installing the developer certificates onto the runner so that I can sign the package. Installing monkey package, which is obviously not there by default. Then I'm running a script to build the package and also notarize it as well. And then I'm grabbing some of the details about the package that I just created so that I can pass those details as variables into the create release and then upload the files. So not even that many steps. If you're new to GitHub Workflows, obviously a lot of those things that are required are sensitive. So we're using GitHub secrets, which you can just add through the GUI, give them a name, and then you can just use this simple substitution syntax, secrets.secretName. And you can do this in two different ways. You can either, if your workflow step has instructions, you can pass the secrets in to those instructions. Or alternatively, as you can see, I'm just running a script, passing the secret in, and then I can just access that in the script with like $1. We're also using the GitHub environment. So there's a whole bunch of default environment variables that are created for you by GitHub Workflows. A good example would be GitHub repository, which will give you your org name / repo name. That could be super helpful. But you can also set your own, and this was a really powerful thing to learn. So when I'm building my package, I write out some text files into the uploads folder with the name and version of the package. I can then simply cap those files into a variable and then echo them out into the GitHub environment. They're then available in any other steps within that job. So here, for example, when I'm naming my release, I'm actually using variables. So the reason I'm doing this is we don't need to edit those workflow files for every release. Simple adoption. So I really wanted to make this script easy to reuse. So I took a lot of inspiration from how you install Brew on your computer, which is to copy a one-liner and pop it into terminal and hit enter. So it's, the 1, 2, 3 is basically creating an empty GitHub repo, because it's the only way you can do that is via the website. CD into a working directory on your local computer where all your package repositories are, and then run this script and hit and follow the prompts. This does require GitHub command line authentication to be configured, but that is a Google journey you can go on your own. Because, yeah, many avenues. There is some initial setup on the repository side as well. So once that empty repo is created, we also need to add the secrets, again, all through the GUI. And we need to enable something called the GitHub token to have write access back to the repository. Because I'm creating a release from in the workflow, it needs to be able to write back to the repo. And that's just a simple choice. So I'll show you that in a sec. So now I'm going to show you that sort of end-to-end solution to create a new package. So my example here is going to be a corp assets package, which has got our logos and brandings and EULAs and all that sort of stuff. So in GitHub, we're just going to jump across and create a new repo. Give it a name. I prefix all mine with package to keep them nice and neat. The script will manage that for you. Obviously, you probably create it as a private repository if it's a corporate package, but you don't need to do anything else. All we needed was that URL. Next up, I'm going to head across to my template solution, create a new project, and then grab that one-liner. In terminal, so you'll see I'm already in a folder called package sources. I've got a couple of other package sources already there. So the script's going to prompt you for a name for your package, and this can be a friendly, marketable name. Spaces are okay. It's going to ask if it wants to configure all the Git stuff for you. And so typically you'd want to do that if you want to push it to GitHub. And that's where we're going to need the repository URL of that empty repo. Paste that in, confirm the details, and then what that's going to do is it's going to reach out to my repo, it's going to pull the things that it needs, it's going to create a new Git repo on your computer, initialize that repo, configure all of the Git settings so that it can push up to GitHub, and install that pre-commit hook that I talked about earlier on. So at that point, the next thing to do is add some content to our package. So this is a pretty quick little demo here, but here's your monkey package root. If I expand that out, you'll see that there's nothing in there currently, but I've got this nice handy one all set up here. So I'm just going to copy and paste that straight in, replace the files. If I expand one of these out, you can see there's a whole bunch of branding stuff and some pre and post install scripts. So at this point, we're actually done with setting up the package. So Monkey Package is very easy to use. I'd recommend playing around with it. So if you think about what we've done, the next thing we need to do is we need to take all of this new repository and the files we've created locally, and we need to send them up to GitHub so we can do that workflow. So the first thing I did there was a git status, just so we can see that there's untracked files. You can add files with git add, check the status again, and then we can commit them. So when we commit, you'll see that that pre-commit hook will trigger, which is going to create a new BOM file for all these extra files and add that to the repository. So this is the script running here, which is obviously not what you'd normally see when you commit. Finally, we can just push them up to GitHub. So just to recap, created an empty repository, we changed directory into a folder on our computer, we ran that in create project script, it prompted us for what we needed, we set up our project, committed it, and sent it up to GitHub. So if I am to refresh this project, all of our work will now be available. And we just need to do the configuration of the GitHub repo. I've sped this up as quickly as possible, but we need to add our secrets, which again, very simple, just through the GUI. You only need to do this once, they'll live there forever. One thing with secrets though is that once you've popped them in there, you can never get them back. So make sure they're saved somewhere safe, or don't save them at all. Sorry. I tried to speed these videos up, but cool, there they are, 6 secrets. Next, the GitHub token. So under our actions section and general, it's as simple as scrolling to the bottom. Here's your GitHub token. It's got read access, we're giving it read write. Cool. So next, we need to create a release. Pretty easy. We actually already showed you this, so I've sped this up heaps. But we're just going to trigger that workflow automatically and produce a package. While that's running, so I recorded this in one go, believe it or not. And I mean, from end to end, it took me like 6 minutes. So, you know, I think it's pretty easy to adopt and use. And then once it's configured, actually updating the packages themselves, I think I showed you that that was pretty easy as well. I'm going to download the package this time and just preview it with suspicious package so that you can see the outcome we've produced. We've got 20 items being put on the disk. It's signed by a developer cert. It's been notarized by Apple, and that notarization ticket's been stapled onto the package as well, which means that when you download it from GitHub, you won't get any gatekeeper warnings. And it runs 2 install scripts. So that's, oh, that doesn't share. Yeah, I love that keyboard shortcut. Yeah, cool. So I don't know, do you guys think that seems easy? I'm getting some like blank nods. That's the mask. That's the masks, yeah, cool. There's a few gotchas and caveats, but not really. You've got to install the signing cert locally on your computer because when that BOM file is created by the pre-commit script, it will need to be there. When you clone an existing project, say you need to do a major overhaul or something, all of those dependencies won't be installed. So there's an install dependencies script that you can just run from the template, and that will install the pre-commit hook and make sure that everything can run properly. In all circumstances, I'm installing monkey package into the temp directory. I don't know how you guys want to organize your computers. It seemed like the safest place to put it. It's like a 1 megabyte file, so you know. You can skip the notarization details altogether. So I understand a lot of people might not have access to an actual developer account in their organization. It will just skip notarization, which is fine. When you download the package, you will get a gatekeeper warning. But when you upload and deploy with Jamf, it'll still be okay. I haven't tested it in a pre-stage package. I'm not sure if they need to be notarized. Yeah, I think, yeah. So I thought they did. So speak to your developer team. And then something I haven't quite worked out yet is that if I update my template repository, repos that you've created won't get those updates. I've been looking into Git submodules, but it's a bit of a learning curve. And also I don't know how much other people will be able to troubleshoot that. So maybe I'll just create a script that just updates the repository. Taking it further. So I've shown you kind of like the base level stuff here. Realistically, committing to the main branch on your remote origin GitHub, not best practice. So if you were using branches, you could then start using pull requests. And as soon as you start doing that, you could start automating the build triggers as well. So you might have a dev branch, and when you commit to the dev branch, it'll automatically build a package that you can download, but it won't release the package. You can also have, when a pull request is approved, that it automatically creates a release for you. Or you could use draft releases for peer review. Organizational secrets, I'm waiting for a meeting with our GitHub team to see if we can use these, but you could put the secrets in once and apply them to multiple repositories. And the other thing I want to talk about as well is I've been using a couple of the steps in my workflow are from the GitHub Actions Marketplace. There are actually heaps of other ones out there. A good place to go exploring might be to automate release notes based on issues and pull requests that are tagged to your release. Yeah. But can anyone think of something that might be like a great way to like tie this all together? I know I could. But that would require a vendor to have an API to upload packages, which doesn't currently exist. But I can sort of demo what that would do. I can demo what that would look like with this feature request repository and a link. So I've sped this up heaps so that you don't have to go through the whole process. But hypothetically here, I've got this one here that builds and signs and publishes a release and uploads it to Jamf. So if I run this workflow and then just wait for it to kick off. So basically this is where I'm going with this solution. Like as soon as there's an API to upload, a first-party API to upload packages into Jamf, then I wouldn't even need to, we could do everything through GitHub, basically. Did I click the button? Yes. So as you can see here, it's already underway. While that's happening, I go across to my packages in this test server. Look at that, feature request 1.3. So you can see how easy it would be to actually get the package into Jamf if there was an API. So all I've done is create the package record, but it's always going to be pending availability because I can't actually send the file to Jamf. But that is where I'm trying to get to with this, and hopefully that will happen soon. Lastly, a few learnings. You can read other people's workflow files on any public repo, and that's where I got most of my inspiration and learnings from at the beginning. If you come across one of those marketplace steps, you can just take the marketplace, the step name, and pop it at the end of github.com/ and land yourself at that actual marketplace repository. And then the other one I was going to talk about just quickly was GitHub runners. So when I first started playing around with them, I was very unsure about the environment that I was working within. So I just wrote a script that basically did a bunch of investigation on the computer and piped out input. So like print my working directory, who am I? Do I have root permission? What applications are installed? Turns out Xcode is. Yeah, and otherwise the GitHub repos were really, GitHub documentation was really good as well. So with that, are there any questions? Thank you.
I've started doing something similar.
Yep.
The problem is with big binaries. So obviously everything's running out of GitHub.
Yep.
Using LFS or?
I don't think we have any packages large enough to worry. Yeah. So like we're not doing Adobe or anything in there or Office. We're pretty much only repackaging things we have to. Everything else is using one of the other solutions I talked about. So I think what's our largest package would be like under 100 meg, well under. Yeah. So I don't have an answer to that. Sorry.
So I'm running. I've got all the code in Bitbucket, and then that goes up, and then the pipelines download to build back that I've got that's running that local run.
Yeah.
So then I keep all the package sources on there.
Yeah.
And it works that way. Does GitHub Actions have local runners?
You can, absolutely, yep. So I'm waiting for our GitHub team to come to me and be like, "What's this bill about?" Yeah, you can set up a local runner and specify that in your workflow file. So if you've not got a tier of GitHub subscription that supports running macOS runners, because they are a bit expensive, and you've got a Mac Mini, then of course you can go and do that. So yeah, I mean, there's also other CI/CD pipelines you could be using as well. I suspect one day we might get told to move this to BuildKite. Stop nodding at me, Wayne. Yeah, but so I mean, there's multiple different options. As I said at the beginning as well, like that repo I've created, feel free to use it as a inspiration and copy and steal whatever you want. It works right now using GitHub, but there's like in particular the build package script would work in any pipeline. There's nothing special in that to do with GitHub. Cool. Any other questions? No. I should have put a QR code up, but anyway. Thank you.